Everything that we do at Jade is timeless. I want the bride to wear this lehenga today and even wear it after 10 years.
What is the difference between a buyer from Mumbai versus a buyer from Delhi?
Bombay is an easy vibe. Delhi is wearing maybe more bling.
What are like the biggest fashion trends that we will see in 2026?
Bridal space, I think the trend is about wearing more tone-on-tone work.
How long does that take to make?
A month, 2 months, depending on the process. My dad didn't want me to take interiors. He insisted that I do engineering. Celebrities, every event that they attend, it's a new brand that they're wearing. So I don't know if a brand gets real visibility through a celebrity.
At what point as a fashion house do you need to do a fashion show?
3 or 4 years down the line. Internationally, fashion shows are done because buyers from across the world come and book their pieces. While in India, it's about showcasing what you have done for the season.
How did you keep the soul of the brand intact?
The trends may change, but your brand cannot be trends.
If you had to pick one person that you could say that would align with your brand.
Radhika Raje Gaikwad, the Maharani of Baroda.
The Pashmina shawls are so expensive because they're all hand woven,
Yes.
right? How do you balance this whole ambition and then with the family?
Having 2 boys, frankly, is the easiest thing.
Can anything be turned into luxury because of marketing today? Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Alina Dissects. You guys love fashion content so much, and I got a lot of comments in the previous ones to get more fashion designers. And so today we have one of India's favorite and my personal favorite also. So Monica, thank you so much for being here. Please tell us, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, Alina. I'm very excited to be on your podcast. I was just telling you that podcast is the new TEDx. I
Yeah.
love listening to everyone's story on your podcast.
And you get to listen to so many different perspectives and
Yes.
different people that you would not
different
get access
industries
to.
also.
But I've been seeing your work. Like I said, I would come down driving from home and see your store and look at the lovely clothes and outfits that you create. But to begin with, I wanted to ask you, it's very luxury, obviously. But was that something that you decided from the beginning it has to be? Or was it something that came across when you were building the brand?
So Jade was born from the legacy of Chanakya. The whole ethos of Chanakya was handcraftsmanship, and handcraftsmanship that is of the highest level,
Okay.
which is artisanal, and everything that is artisanal and handcrafted speaks luxury.
Okay.
So the brand ethos and the way Jade started, we started with luxury. Our know-how was working with all the European brands.
Okay.
So we started it from the bottom to top. It was all about handcrafted, artisanal Indian luxury, Indian couture house.
Okay. And did you always want to do this, or is it something that once you grew up you knew that I want to have a brand of my own, label of my own?
I studied interiors.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, anything creative, anything that had art, anything cultural, anything that involved creativity and enjoying working with my pencil would interest me. So
Okay.
I was doing furniture designing, and then Nehal and I decided, okay, let's do something with all the know-how that we have of Chanakya. We need to have a brand in India, and that's how Jade was born. And then whether it's fashion, whether it's home, whether it's furniture, it's all about creativity. So I learned a lot on the job, but I did a fashion course in Central St. Martin's, learned a bit of, the know-how of the business, and then started Jade.
Is it important for people to study it before they get into this industry?
Do you know what happens with fashion in India is the barrier to enter is not that much. You
Yeah.
can have, like, it could be a brand can start from a garage, right? You can have 4 tailors, a master, and maybe gather fabrics from all around and begin a business. But to understand the commerce of it and to have a 5-year plan, how you're going to market, how you're going to be selling it, who's your audience, all that is super important.
Okay.
Because so that's why studying the textile, having a purpose to your brand. Just by loving clothes, you cannot start a brand.
Right.
Yeah, just by understanding fabrics, you can't start a brand. You have, maybe if you are so passionate, maybe have a partner who then understands commerce of it or understands the marketing bit of it. Because otherwise, if you try to do both, you will get consumed. And then the
Right.
creativity goes out of the window.
Right.
So to balance it all is very important. And I do think that not everybody who loves clothes can start a business.
Apart from designs, what would you say is like the business like? What all are the key components to that?
One of the key components now, Anya, has become your storytelling.
Okay.
Your purpose, your ethos needs to be told to the audience very beautifully. Because Jade as a brand, we were always about hand craftsmanship. We always did everything from the finishing. If you see our product, any of these jackets that like the jacket that I'm wearing right now, even if you see the reverse of it, you can wear them inside out.
Oh.
So the finishing of it, I think all of it put together is very, very important. But the storytelling of that, because the audience now is asking for everything transparent.
Okay.
I think there was a shift during COVID where people wanted to understand where their clothes are made, how they are made. The transparency of a brand became very, very important.
Okay, so you say that now that's very important. What did people look at before?
I felt earlier marketing played a huge role, and that need not be as transparent.
Okay.
But now people have got very aware,
Okay.
which is a very good thing. Your marketing cannot be just a gimmick. It has to be your own story. Like I feel that I'm guilty of not talking so much about our brand or not even storytelling, because for 15 years, I think I lived under the carpet. I didn't think that talking about and storytelling what we do, what we believe in was important. For me, just making beautiful clothes was important. Working hard and making sure that each piece is a stunner. But that's not enough now.
So yeah, I wanted to understand what is the story of Jade now? Like if you had to explain it today, because you had to work around it. It was not set in stone from the beginning.
I think from the time we started Jade to now, our story is the same. It's
Okay.
just that we are able to tell our story now. We have always loved the Indian textiles. We've always been about Indian crafts. In fact, right now we have started this project called Grassroot Artisan Project, which has been our passion project from the time Jade started. We've
Okay.
been working with different grassroots craft pockets across India. But it's now that we have formalized it,
Oh.
put together, we work with different pockets at the same time. It's a very, very ambitious project.
Okay.
Because it is one thing to work in your ateliers and get a piece ready. But it's very, very different when it comes to creating a piece in the villages of India,
Okay.
where
What
the
is
infrastructure
is
is limited, right? It's not the same as having a factory in Bombay. So if I go to Bholpur, which is next to Kolkata, I am traveling from Calcutta about 6 hours. There is a beautiful tiny, house, which is the center where women come, they come cycling.
Okay.
They cycle for an hour and come to that center, and they paint batik.
Okay.
Or it could be a Suf center, which is in Palanpur, where all these women meet in the evening, embroider together, they sing
Oh,
sing
okay.
along. So
Okay.
it's such a diverse and dynamic work that you have to do with the grassroots artisans. And it's different when you're working in the factory, right?
Okay.
So that kind of storytelling of what we actually do and who we are, it has become important for the brand.
Since you spoke about grassroots, because I'm assuming that the outfits and the clothing pieces are made in factories, right? So what do you do with these artists? How are the clothes made from there and got to the consumer?
So as of now, we are working with different craft pockets like Salem, which is making Kanjivaram silk for us, but we will reinterpret it.
Okay.
So if you see a Kanjivaram silk, there are these temple motifs that they use, right? And it is from generations being used in saris.
Okay.
What we have done is use the same Kanjivaram. We made it, we've changed the grammage of it. We've made it more liquid, more refined,
Okay.
and in a way that I can drape it in silhouettes. We've changed the design of it. We've made it contemporary so that you and I don't have to wait for a sari occasion to wear a Kanjivaram. We want all these crafts to be not worn only on occasions. We want to wear it every day. I want every Indian girl to have a Kanjivaram or a Banarasi or like Pochampally, we are working with Ikat. We don't need to wait for an occasion which is traditional to wear an Ikat sari or a Ikat kurta. I want an Ikat jacket because that's what I wear every day. Like I'm wearing, this is a khimkhab.
Okay.
We normally use khimkhab in lehengas.
Okay.
But I want to do a design which is contemporary and turn khimkhab into pants, into jackets. Like we've made structured ikat jackets. Then we work in Bholpur with batik artists. So if you see these batik designs, they are extremely contemporary. Like we've taken inspiration from Panchatantra, made animals, made a very fun, playful design out of it, and then made dresses, pants, something that you could be very resort wear. You can wear it on your holidays or just it could be over the weekends. Also, we do katha work with the same Bholpur center women. The katha is so fun. Like you don't have to wear just a beautiful katha dupatta, which is traditional, or a katha sari. Katha can be made fun. So that's the whole purpose of Grassroot Artisan Project, where we contemporize the designs. Also, it is very important for the pockets that we work with, all the artisans, for them to educate them to start learning a new design language.
Okay.
Like the Ikat artist that we are working with, Shivaji, his kids, both of them have learned textile designing.
Okay.
And recently he won a state award for the design that we have developed with him.
Okay.
Because it was new, it was contemporary. We also twisted the yarn of Ikat silk, the silkworm that he was using, silk yarn, and we made it denim-like.
Okay.
So I could use it for structured garments. So it was innovative. It is something that he's not been doing from generations. Otherwise, they've been making saris for generations now, or fabrics of ikat, and they were only using cotton. So bringing innovation into craft is very important.
Okay. You go to these artisans who are creating this stuff and you make variations for them. And then there are selected pieces that are then made in just factories and this you're picking up from them. So all of your outfits are handmade.
Yes.
All of them
Yes.
from scratch.
Yes.
And these are the people that you're working with. And now you're highlighting where they come from and what they do.
Yes.
Is from what I understand
Yes,
now.
right.
Okay. Now I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if we make denim, this
Yeah.
this one is not woven, but we have woven denim in Panipat,
Okay.
which is I think almost first in India. And that kind of denim is so contemporary. Then I'll team it up with a Kanjivaram jacket. And I'll put ajrak lining with it. So just using different crafts together. Also, how a denim or a Kanjivaram or a ikat can be paired together. Like it's so eclectic. It's more, for me, it's a Bombay vibe.
Okay.
Because I've grown up in Bombay.
Yeah.
And for me, I have, grown up maybe eating a South Indian idli dosa in Matunga. Or you may find a lot of Gujaratis in the South Mumbai where I live.
Yeah.
Plus, it's just, I've worked with people from different cultures in Bombay. Like my photographer, my videographer is from Punjab.
Yeah.
I've worked with models who may have come from Goa or Assam. Is this my growing up days to now working in the industry? There are a lot of influences in Mumbai. It's a melting pot of different cultures.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I see this line. I wanted to be comfort, but I wanted to have a mix of cultures, a mix of craft, just everything that Bombay is about.
Okay. So I didn't know it was a reflection of Bombay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I understand. So when you go to these artisans, how much of what they do you keep intact because we want to keep that essence of what they're doing, and how much of it can you say you can like churn around or move or make new, and then how do they react to it?
Everything that they do is kept intact.
Okay.
Because the craft cannot be destroyed. What they know, their knowledge, and the way they work cannot be destroyed or cannot be altered. It's just the sensibility of making it for today.
Okay.
It's just the design sensibility, contemporizing it, or I may give them, when I do katha, I may give them a German thread to work with, or a quality of thread which will not just break even if it's done on a bag or on a shoe.
Okay.
Or done on a denim, because I want to make sure that the quality of everything that is stitched is to an international standard.
Okay. And how do you set these international standards?
Indian standards are international standards.
Okay. Got it. I do want to ask you about like luxury, okay? In today's world, I feel like with marketing, I feel like the lines have been blurred between what can be luxury and what not. I personally, because I work in the marketing field, I know I can take a product and be like price it and brand it in such a way and market it in such a way that it will feel luxury. So my question is luxury that emotion that we get out of using something, or can anything be turned into luxury because of marketing today?
So, marketing plays such a big role, but I think it's up to the audience also to understand whether it's a gimmick or the brand stands for what they are saying.
Okay.
It is as important for the brand to really not do lip service and tell the truth. At the same time, I think audience also needs to see through. For me, I want to tell you this small story which I've earlier also said. Like when I go to these craft pockets, it's so heartwarming to see the kind of craft they do. And like there is this Kutch pocket that I had visited, and one of the houses that I was just walking past by had this beautiful veranda. There was an old lady who was sitting there and stitching a piece of cloth. It was exquisite.
Okay.
And it looked like as if she's been embroidering that piece of cloth for a long time. So I went up to her. I loved it because the stitches were very, very fine. It's difficult to even see with your naked eye. It
Okay.
was that fine. I went up to her and I said, I have to buy this. I love craft. I love vintage pieces. And she said, no, I can't sell this.
She's making it for herself, for her
She
family.
was making it for her granddaughter. She started making it when her granddaughter was born, and she was going to gift it to her granddaughter when she gets married.
Oh,
That's 16, 18 years of embroidering the same fabric.
wow.
Now that is luxury. Now
Okay.
that, how can any logo in the world replicate that luxury? Anything that is handcrafted, which has an experience, which has love poured into it, which has passion into it, cannot be replicated by marketing.
True. My mom, she stitches also sweaters and this and that. She likes
Yeah.
to do that. And I was like, Mom, but like, why are you wasting so much time? You can go buy something like this.
Right.
She's knitting a sweater by herself
Yeah.
for my mamu. And I told her that, like, just go pick it up from somewhere. Why are you
Yeah.
spending so much time? And she's like, but it won't be the same thing now. When I give it to
Exactly.
mamu, he will be like, she spent so much time making it.
That
and
love
that's
is-
the effort.
And that's luxury, right?
That's luxury. Okay, because I would just be like, in the fast world that we live in, like just order it quickly. Like
No,
spending
exactly.
so
For
much
me,
time.
even personally, for me, luxury is about peace of mind.
Okay.
Luxury is about, time that I spend with my family, right? So we need to know our boundaries of luxury.
Now tell me, as a consumer, how do we come to know if something is a marketing gimmick or if something's actually luxury that we should invest in because, of course, it's expensive?
Again, as I said, I think we need to differentiate between just buying a logo or to buying into something that has meaning, that has history to it, that has craftsmanship to it. I think once we start building awareness, like many times I've had, my son is 24 and all his friends, sometimes come home, and that's when I'll tell you this story because they came up to me. I was wearing this beautiful lehriya dupatta.
I
And
love-
yeah,
yeah.
and they came up to me and they were like, Auntie, you're wearing such a beautiful print.
Oh,
And that's when I realized that all these kids may go to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, wherever in the world, they come back, but they don't know the difference between a tie-and-dye lehriya dupatta to a print. So it starts with building awareness. But how will they know?
how will they know?
They are not taught in school. And if their mothers are not wearing a lehriya dupatta or a bandhni dupatta or a patola or a kanjivaram, they haven't been exposed to that.
Right.
So building awareness is the first thing. And then when you start understanding what is luxury is when you're going to buy that luxury.
Right. So as a user, if I'm buying something like that, then I need to know what this product is.
Yes.
Like a dupatta from Punjab and a dupatta from Jaipur is like very different. And then when you like study it, you'll know what kind of work and what kind of material has been used to create
I would
it.
say not just like from Punjab or Gujarat, you need to understand whether that fulkari is actually hand
Fulkari.
done or is it machine.
Oh, okay.
Then are you paying the price for a handmade piece, or you're just paying that price because it is made by a certain brand and then said it's a fulkari, right? It's like that.
Even the pashmina shawls are so expensive because they're all hand woven, right? And
Yes.
why is it so expensive? It costs like 1 lakh rupees is I think the minimum
Yeah.
for a
So
pashmina.
that of course has something to do with the wool of the sheep, etc. But when it comes for me for weaving, like a sari which is maybe happening in Banaras or in Pochampally, like I did the ikat design. It was a double ikat.
Okay.
The process, if I explain to you the whole process, it'll take us 45 minutes.
Okay.
But it took me a year to have my designs into rolling.
Okay.
Because from punching the design to how the ikat process, the patola that you get in Gujarat is equivalent to that. Every color is hand dyed. It is tied, the thread, and then it is hand woven. So the process is only so long.
Right.
A sari, which is power loom, can take 2 days. But a sari that is hand loom, hand woven, will take 3 months to 3.5 months.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. When you wear that piece, is truly a luxury.
And if you had to say these like lehengas that people wear on their weddings, how long does that take to make?
I think that could be anywhere between a month, 2 months, depending on the process and
how
what kind of
intricate it
work it
is.
is. Yes.
Because if it's too much work and it has too
Yes.
much, it'll take like
Yeah,
longer to be
yeah.
made. Tell me, you're one of the brands that has really evolved and stuck through with all these passing years and has been relevant even today, which is a difficult thing for any business to be. So how did you keep the soul of the brand intact over the years?
When the ethos and the DNA of the brand is strong, it is so easy to keep it intact because that's something you believe in and you don't shift out of that. The trends may change, but your brand cannot be trends. Your brand has to have the same passion and the ethos.
What do you do about trends? So, for example, if something is trending and it's only going to be one season for you to be able to do that, do you dive into it and say brides are going to be wearing this? For example, color is a huge thing, right? Every year we see that, okay, this is the color that brides are going to wear, and then next year it's changing. How do you as a designer adapt to that?
I don't believe in trends.
Okay.
Everything that we do at Jade is timeless. I want the bride to wear this lehenga today and even wear it after 10 years. You can team it up differently. I believe in making versatile pieces, timeless pieces, pieces that by themselves, like a top, you can wear it differently with a trouser, with a lehenga, with a skirt. I want every piece to have meaning in your wardrobe.
And what is this meaning that you're trying to get out there?
Everything that we wear and make, because it has such a soul to it, because it is handcrafted, I want it to have meaning, right? I want it to have meaning in your wardrobe because it should be something that it's not worn one time and put it aside. It's not fast fashion.
Right.
It's a slow process. It's a process of making it with love, making it with detailing. Every piece is high couture.
I've seen that. Tell me that when you started this brand, going backtrack a little bit, at what point as a fashion house do you need to do a fashion show?
So, as we discussed before, the entry barrier to enter fashion business is very low, right? You can start a fashion house just by having a small workshop and begin it. But just once you start understanding the commerce of it, understanding what is selling, understanding your audience, and also just the whole construction to way a fashion show works, I think it should be maybe 3 or 4 years down the line.
Okay.
Yeah,
Till then, you're supposed to build the brand.
I think so.
And the story.
Yeah, because you want to build your community also, right?
What is a value add that you get through having a fashion show?
Seeing your pieces on the model, or maybe doing a campaign shoot, all of that adds because you are able to tell your story on how each piece is worn or how do you team it. Sometimes the audience is not able to imagine. So making them realize on how differently it could be worn or your vision of your garments is the reason why you need to have a fashion show or a shoot.
Okay, so this is the creative side of it.
Yes.
How does the business get impacted with a fashion show?
I think once it's creative and commerce, both are merged, right? When it comes to a fashion show, like internationally, fashion shows are done because buyers from across the
They
world come for that show and book their pieces because they do it 6 months in advance. While in India, it's about showcasing what you have done for the season.
Okay. And does that have an effect on the kind of value you see in terms of the number of people that are buying your pieces? Like, oh, you've done a fashion show, maybe that puts you on the map and a lot more people know about it and a lot more traction comes from there. Does that happen?
With internet, it does, right? Because,
internet.
everybody's posting stories about it. You're in the news, there's marketing around it, there's PR around it. So it does help in terms of, catching eyeballs. So it does have commerce related to that also.
Okay. And when was the first fashion show that you ever did?
First 5 years or 6 years of Jade,
You
I
were
didn't
building
do a
the
fashion.
brand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think one of the first fashion shows I had done was Lakme,
Okay.
from what I remember. Yeah. But I've done very few fashion shows in Jade because I think every year is not possible to really just do because for me fashion show has a lot to do with what you create on the ramp. It's not just about the clothes. It's about the storytelling, it's about the music, it's about where I do the fashion show. Like the last fashion show we did was at the museum because we had a collaboration with the textile gallery of the museum, so then it had a meaning. So
an
for me a
experience.
fashion show has to have a meaning.
Right. Whether it's a fashion show or not, do you think that having a celebrity adds to the brand value that you have, or does it take away from the brand in terms of, oh, it's getting that kind of recognition because the celebrity is attached to it?
It could work either ways, right? Depending on which the celebrity is or how they portray the brand, right? Sometimes celebrities are changing clothes every single day. Every event that they attend, it's a new brand that they're wearing. So I don't know if a brand gets real visibility through a celebrity unless they are brand ambassadors of that brand and they believe in that brand, they're wearing that brand again and again through the years. I think that's when it has any meaning.
Okay, because I would assume that maybe it, of course, gets like eyeballs, but I feel like it's temporary because,
is
like
temporary,
you said,
right?
they
Yeah.
wear somebody else, and then they wear somebody else, and then you can't associate.
But like someone
them.
like Magic Johnson and Nike collaboration, right? That was such a huge hit because he believed in the brand. He wore it year again and again, and it had. It was a collaboration which wasn't just a celebrity collaboration.
Yeah.
He's a sports person,
Yeah.
So that kind of meaningful
built a
collaboration,
product
they
around
build a
it.
product.
Yeah.
So that kind of meaningful collaboration definitely works.
And if you had to pick one person that you could say that would align with yours, if you could?
I really love Radhika Raji Gaikwad,
Okay.
the Maharani of Baroda. For me, she stands for timelessness. For me, she also believes in Indian culture, Indian craftsmanship. For me, it would be someone like that.
Someone like that. Oh, you wish you could have a brand ambassador like that. That would be
Yes,
so cool.
yes, yes.
More than just like celebrities.
That's
maybe if
true.
you got the
Yeah.
Maharanis of the world.
Yes.
That would be like, maybe you could try that.
Yeah.
Like, this is the brand ambassador I want. Tell me now about the consumers. Like you said, it's also important to understand who you're making this for. When you're making the outfits, do you make it according to what you think is nice? What is your design sense? Or do you keep them in mind and say, like, this is what the audiences will like? For example, today's younger generation, they like to wear different kind of clothes. Fashion keeps changing for them. Do you adapt to that, or you stick to, no, I want like timeless, like pieces?
That's how the grassroots project, right? The idea is how do I interpret the age-old craft and give it to the younger generation? Because I want them to own Indian craft. I want them to have a Kanjivaram jacket. I want them to have a ikat pantsuit or a Banarasi jacquard jacket, you know. So, how do I interpret these crafts and make them relevant to today?
That's how you've
That's the
taken the
whole purpose.
customers.
Yes, it has to be contemporary, it has to be relevant to today.
And how does, tell me, luxury coexist with like fashion that is sustainable and fashion that is at grassroots levels?
So, anything that is handmade is the true luxury, truest form of luxury. Anything that is machine made cannot be luxury. I think that is quite established for in my head.
Okay. No, because I'll tell you why. For a regular audience, maybe, who doesn't say buy a lot of luxury pieces, for them, if they see something that is very high priced, they'll feel like, oh, it's expensive, so it's luxury. But from what even I understand, it's not that. Something like that is worth lesser in price also could be a luxury item. But you know how you associate it with price? Like you'll be
Yeah.
like, oh, this is expensive, so it must be luxury, which is what the branding and the marketing around it tells you. Like that's how maybe I assume people think about it. That, oh, it's expensive. Oh, it's like this brand is expensive and it has the logo. Oh, so then it's like a luxury piece of item. But the quality would be like similar to something that you can get for much less so.
Right. No, but I think then the audience has to know and understand, right? That's why building the awareness and understanding what that product is very important.
Right. And since we're talking about consumers and buyers, tell me, what is the difference between like a buyer from Mumbai versus a buyer from Delhi?
Lot.
Lots, no, I've heard.
So if you see our grassroots artisan project line is all about Bombay chic, is what I was telling you. It's a mix of cultures. It's more easy vibe, and I think Delhi is a bit more about cord sets,
Okay.
not mixing things together.
Okay.
Wearing maybe more bling. Bombay is a easy vibe. You know, it accepts people the way they are dressed. So there is a huge difference between Bombay and a Delhi client.
Okay. And do you make pieces accordingly then? Or do your stores keep separate items accordingly?
Not really. I think we still want to stand by what we believe in, and clients accept, and they want a different flavor in their wardrobe.
Yeah. Also, considering there are so many designers out there, where do you take your inspiration from?
Inspiration can come from so many places, right? Inspiration can be from the textile that I have been collecting over the years. It could be the places that I visit. Everything that actually all my holidays are around cultural places.
Oh, really?
Yes, like if I go to London, which is like such a city vibe, urban vibe, right? I'll go to a flea market in London, or
Okay.
I'll go to a V&A museum. You know, so for me, every place has become my inspiration.
How do you take back, like, oh, this is something that if I made into a clothing piece would look great from there?
It's not always about, you know, that this will look good in clothes. Like I visited temples of Hoysala many years back, and by the way, it's a UNESCO site. I don't know if
Okay.
you visited
No, I
it. It's one of the most stunning temples. It took 3 generations of emperors to finish
Wow.
that temple. It's a marvel.
Okay.
When I went there, I knew that I have to come back and have my inspiration, and my whole collection was temples of Hoysala when I got back.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So your inspiration could be your travel, it could be any of your 5 senses.
I feel like from whatever I've seen on the internet, your personal style feels very effortless. It feels like you're not putting in so much effort to put together what you are personally wearing.
Yeah.
So how much of that have you taken into the brand, or because you're designing it for brides or designing it for occasions, does that have to have a difference in it?
No, I think Jade is all about my personal style.
Okay.
It is timeless. It is very versatile because that's how I like to wear it. Like I may team up this jacket with a skirt or a lehenga too tomorrow.
Okay.
It's a very versatile vibe that I have. Also very easy vibe. I like wearing very classic, timeless pieces. So we may have very simple saris, which are pre-drape, chiffon, lightweight. I love wearing lightweight clothes, and then I'll do extremely beautiful handcrafted kasab piece, which is a blouse, or it could be a jacket again.
Hmm.
So making that piece versatile and timeless has been my personal style.
Nice. And if you had to say for somebody who is like starting out their career today in this space, what would you tell them? Like, this is something that they should keep in mind if they're starting a fashion label.
I think having a purpose to your brand is the most important thing.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to tell your story very well.
Right. Not just started for like starting a fashion label. Because
Yeah,
that's
not
what
started because
everybody
you love
does.
clothes.
that and I know so many people who are in fashion schools right
Yeah.
now. There are so many, because now they're established like places who are
Yes.
teaching you this thing. I don't think back in the day there was that much.
Yeah.
So there's so many people looking up to, you know, fashion designers to tell them that what would they have done differently today. If you had to actually start your business today, what would you do differently?
I think I would have put a face to the brand much earlier. Like, as I said, for 15 years of Jade, we stayed under the carpet, and our brand storytelling wasn't done as well. What we believed in, everything that our ethos is or the DNA is, was never told to the audience. Like, I wouldn't have come on this podcast 10 years back.
You would have been like, let my work
I was
speak
very
for
shy. No, I was
itself.
very shy.
Oh,
I was
you were
very
shy.
happy
In your
working,
own way.
yes, behind the scenes and just creating clothes.
Yeah, but now it's important. And this is something that we're seeing across the board because of social media and because of digital. We see that no matter what you're doing, even if
Yeah.
it's a startup, if it's FMCG, everybody that I meet, I'm like, if you are a founder, you need to be a spokesperson
Yes.
or get a spokesperson to
Yeah.
be able to talk about your brand,
Yeah.
because it's become so important today.
Because it's become important to the audience also. I want to understand, like, now that I know the media house that you run, I want to see it. I want
Yeah.
to follow it. I want to understand it much more. Because I've met you, I understand you.
Right. It brings that personal
Yes.
touch to it, which
Yes.
we're missing. And I feel like was done through models, etc., before in the fashion
Yeah.
industry. But people want to know the founder and their stories also. It's important. If you had to pick a spokesperson from the industry right now, who would you pick for your brand?
I have actually 3 people that I would pinpoint. Rochelle, Divya Thani. She
Okay.
also understands fashion. She understands the depth of craft. She understands India, the length and breadth of India. And Nonita,
Okay.
because her knowledge in craft, in also business of fashion, is very well read, very well spoken. And I think working in the industry, she has read a lot and met a lot of weavers, to craft people, and also people who are designers, you know. So
Right.
she has the knowledge of both the sides.
So you would pick people who have depth and knowledge about
Yes.
what they are doing,
Doing.
instead of just somebody who's like, this outfit is really great.
Yes, yes. Even a Sujata Asumal
Okay, I've
has
heard of-
been, taking up fashion causes and talking about Indian culture so beautifully.
I know you said that you don't believe in trends much, but if you had to tell us, like, as a consumer, what are like the biggest fashion trends that we will see in 2026? What would that be?
I don't think I follow social media as much.
No, in general, fashion have like trends going on, right? For example, I don't know, fish cut linga, or
I'm
like
wearing barrel
this-
pants. I know that those are trending and I love wearing them because they're loose.
Can you
big.
imagine that like skinny jeans went out of fashion and
Yes.
how? And I remember like I have certain pieces that I pair it up with, and my younger sisters will be like, it's so out of fashion. And I
Yeah.
said, once in a while, I'm going to wear what I have.
Yeah.
I'm not going to waste it all up.
Correct.
But I know that the Gen Zs, they absolutely hate wearing anything that is skinny, then like
Yes,
anything
it's
that is
a
like
broad simple
tight.
pants or
Yeah.
barrel pants.
Yeah, so that is a fashion shift that
Yes.
we have seen. But I'm trying to understand if there is something in the bridal space, in the couture space that we
So
can
bridal space, I think the trend is about wearing more tone on tone work.
Okay.
But that's what Jade started even 15 years back.
Okay.
So I feel we've been trending from 15 years.
How
The
nice.
brands have started doing tone on tone work now.
Okay.
But that's what Jade had always started. We never did gold embroidery on a blue lehenga or a pink lehenga. We always did pink work on pink. Like for me, it was more European influence on
Okay.
our pieces. So we've always done like a red on red. And pieces like that. Even if I do gold, then the base will be gold. So we've always been about, unless it's like an ektar lehenga, which is traditionally colorful,
Got it. Okay.
where there are maybe hundreds of colors used in a lehenga, but that's how traditionally ektar work is done. So unless it's a piece that has a traditional form into it, it will always be about, doing tones which are complementing our body, tones which are, tone on tone colors actually.
Got it. If you had to pinpoint a favorite collection that you have come up with from your line, what would that be?
Bombay sheet.
Okay.
Yeah, the Grassroot Artisan Project collection.
That one.
I think that's just so much my personal vibe and something that I've grown up with.
Okay. You've done this as a woman for so many years, and we get this so much that, back in the day, at least, it was much more harder, I'm assuming. And I have spoken to women who are designers in this space, and now it's very well respected. But 15-20 years back then, people would be like, what are you doing? You're stitching clothes. And like, I know a designer who's been called a darzi, is like such a big fashion designer today. She is. Did you get any of that when you were starting?
My dad didn't want me to take interiors.
Okay.
He insisted that I do engineering because
Engineering.
He used to have this factory and he was making some plastic products. So yes, I think everyone goes through these phases in life, right? And I insisted. I said, "What will I do in engineering? I don't understand numbers. I don't understand anything.
Yeah.
I have to be on the creative side. Either I take fashion." Or I take up interiors, which is all about creativity. So yes, I've also had, to pass through these barriers to do what I want to do and what I believe in doing.
So this is what happened like at home when you have to convince your parents, for example.
Yeah.
Outside of it, did you see that, people are like, because you're a founder who's female, so then there would be a lot of like on the fashion side of it?
I felt that happened in the business, on the job, because if you see, it's a male-dominated society.
Right.
So your artisans to your masters to your tailors to maybe everyone who is in your office could be male.
Right.
And then to make them come around to having a female boss, it does have its, frictions.
Okay, so that took some time to figure out and place, right? That's what I mean. For even today, for me, for example, it'll be like there are these people who are so much senior that you have to tell what to do, and they're male figures. They've been there for so long, so it takes.
You have to have a balance there.
You have to get to how do you do that, and then for me, at least, my team is like younger, etc.
Right.
But when you're speaking to vendors who are outside for anything, I feel like won't take you as seriously because
it still does happen, right?
It still does happen. I mean, it's happening with me that I have to, for example, I'll tell you this story where I was younger. I used to talk in a different tone. Like I used to be talking like this, and this was my volume, and this is how I used to speak.
Right.
And then I realized that nobody's taking me seriously if I talk like this. And so I need to change the voice modulation if I want people to take
it seriously,
me seriously and get things done. And so that's such a small thing, but like the impact of it is so big that I have to be able to have people listen to my instructions.
True.
I have to say it in a certain way, and that's something I learned on the way of running a business.
I think that's slowly shifting, but yes, we still have some time to go.
Okay, but you said you have 2 kids.
Yes, I have 2 lovely boys.
How nice.
24 and 22.
Wow.
Yeah.
You do not look like you are a mother of a 25-year-old. How do you balance this whole ambition and then with the family and then be peaceful at it? Because I feel like you're not very chaotic. You're at like peace of where you are.
First of all, it's not easy.
Yeah.
There is always a choice that you need to make every single day. It's not about, making a choice in life because I wanted both.
Okay.
I've always been working from the time I finished my education. I started a small furniture business. Then I started Jade once I got married. So for me, it was not an option. Okay. I always wanted to work. And then finding the right balance has been an everyday choice. Okay. Then whatever is important for that day. If my child needs me in school that day, I drop work and I go to him.
Okay.
or if it has to be something that he is traveling, or though having two boys, frankly, is the easiest thing.
I
I've
thought
been
it's the
very lucky.
most difficult thing
Not
to
at
have two
all.
boys
No.
because
I
they are
think having a
ruckus.
girl is very different. I think they need more of your attention.
Really?
Yes, and boys really do their own thing.
I have got the opposite because the parents who have girls will be like they're sitting in one corner, nicely playing and in
Yeah.
one corner silently. But when you have boys and the energy that they have, it becomes
Yeah.
even more difficult to be able to do anything.
No, not at all. I think boys are so easy. They want to
Oh,
do their own thing. They want to play PS, or they want to watch some football game, and it's the easiest thing. But at the same time, you have to balance it, right? It can't be always work, or it can't always be family, and then let one suffer.
it's so difficult to be able to do that because when you're put in that position, you'll be like, oh, I am missing out on either of it. Like if
You
you're
do have some guilty spots, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
sometimes my son maybe has fever, and there is something at work that I
Urgent.
urgently need to look into. So there have been those days, right?
if you had to tell me and the younger generation of women who are trying to do this and build on their own, what would you say? Like what is the best way to be able to balance everything?
I think balancing everything is not possible, but having a partner that understands you and supports you and is helping you balance is the best way. Supposedly, you may come back late from work,
Yeah.
and then your partner needs to be okay with that, right? So, having the right partner is most important.
I wanted to also now speak about just the industry at whole. And like I was speaking to you before, also, I wanted to ask you as a layman, again, I don't come from the fashion industry. And when we see in news, for example, recently Alia wore a dress. I'm calling it a dress. But she wore a dress that was a Gucci outfit. What happened on the internet was everybody said that that's clearly a sari. So why is Gucci calling it like a dress and not a sari, which it's supposed to be? As somebody who's not from the fashion industry said, why is this such a big topic of discussion? B, if you call it a lehenga or a sari or don't give it a name, does it impact the value of a sari, for example? So a lot of people said that if she's wearing a sari, even if it's by Gucci, it should be called that. It shouldn't be called like a skirt. It shouldn't be called like a a dupatta, etc. So are these things very important to be named and to be put out there that this is what they are doing, or is it okay to have variations of whatever the brand is putting out?
I see different people look at it with a different lens. For me, it would be like if that inspiration is from somewhere, it's good to name it with that inspiration. Secondly, a fashion can be interpreted in so many ways.
Right.
So you can't understand where it has come from. For us, it was a very clearly a sari, right?
Yeah, for any Indian looking
yes,
at
for
it.
any Indian. But I don't know how they saw it or what was their inspiration. So it can be really interpreted in so many ways.
Right. Same thing happened with the Prada sandals, which clearly look like they are Kolhapuris, and we've been wearing it for years, and we've known about it for years. And there was a whole outrage that this is a Kolhapuri chappal. And then what happened is that they sent their team to come here in India and study it and know about it, and then officially like work with those people who were creating it. But my question again as a layman is, how do you track where exactly that thing has come from? Because it could be inspired from different places and different ways. And then how do you credit the right person for that piece of fashion inspiration?
It's good that they sent their team to understand the way the Kolhapuri chappal is made, or how in our tradition Kolhapuri chappals are used and how they are worn with things. Many times what happens is craft was born at the same time in different cultures.
Right.
I'm not talking about just the Kolhapuri, because maybe Kolhapuri is born in India, it is made in India, and worn with our outfits, traditionally. But there are different other crafts that I have seen, like it could be a Parsi gara, or it could be some kind of a carpet, which is in different cultures interpreted in similar ways at the same time. And it could be many centuries ago, or it could be hundreds of years ago. So sometimes to backtrack where it began is difficult, but yes, it could be a interpretation like ikat was even made in Africa,
Okay.
right? But in a way that they interpreted it. And ikat is also made in India. Or an iktar embroidery itself is happening in Gujarat in a different way, and in Kashmir we interpret iktar in a different way.
True.
Right, so it's the same embroidery, similar looking, the same technique, but
Both of them
both of them
separately
different
have.
looking, and also maybe have started at similar time or at separate times. Like the batik in India was it is born in Indonesia, batik.
Okay.
Rabindranath Tagore got batik to India.
Okay.
So then we interpreted batik in our own way, while in Indonesia batik is done in their traditional form. So
Right.
it can be
Mix
originated,
and blend.
yes. So many times you don't know where the origin is. Many times it's easy to predict also,
Okay.
because from the motives, a Japanese motive or an Indian motive, or from the craft that they have been doing from centuries. So sometimes it's easy, sometimes it may,
Yeah,
the
because
lines are blurred.
I believe inspiration is everything is inspired from something,
Somewhere,
right?
right,
Somewhere or
yeah.
something. So you are picking it up from a place that could have
Yes.
had it, and you're making your own iteration and putting it out. Like you
Right.
spoke about the carpets also. I've seen Turkish carpets like you get in Turkey are
Yeah.
so similar to the ones that we see in Kashmir.
Right.
And so how will you trace back which
Yes.
ones? Because they look exactly, and they're known for
Yeah.
Kashmiri carpet,
Yes.
expensive and like
Yeah.
very intricate,
Hand knotted.
hand knotted,
yes.
handmade. But then you go to Turkey and then you're seeing like, or these other Arabic countries also, you see the same kind of work that is in those
Yeah.
carpets also.
But if we really have to track down, India was such a large country that time. Maybe all these
Trade
influences that
influence.
it's all trade, and it all was part of the same culture. Maybe when we talk of Turkey, because it's so close, like a cotton that is grown in India and the silk that was made in India was exported then to so many countries, and then they started making a similar silk, or like the Silk Route that is very famous. I think India was a hub of many innovations when it comes to textiles, when it comes to tie and dye, weaving. A lot of craft was originated here.
Right. One of the other things that's coming to my mind is that, bridal lehengas, if we see designers create, have a certain value to it. And we understand that people who are able to obviously afford it will go for that. And then for everybody else, it's like an aspiration, like I want to wear a jade one day on our wedding. How do you see your customers in that space, that this is our value, this is what we have put in, and then it's for those people who will be able to wear it and fit into it?
A brand can belong to everybody, right? So it's not about a client, it's about a community. It's about everyone who believes in wearing that brand.
Okay, and what would you say your ideal community is?
Everyone who has this vibe which is very India oriented, where you believe in our textiles, believe in our craftsmanship, but at the same time using it in your own way, contemporizing it, styling it differently.
Okay. Do you have a bride story that you can tell us, like when she wore it and then she felt like, oh my God, this is what was made for me? Because I've heard that a lot. Brides say that, I wore so many lehengas, but this one that I wore, I felt like it was made for me. What is that experience?
I think that many brides have told me.
Yeah? Okay.
Especially the ones that, I work with personally.
Okay.
And where we start from the scratch. And sometimes, I know these brides, they've grown up around me,
Okay.
like there are these brides that I'm dressing right now. They were with my son in school,
Okay.
and I've seen them growing up. For me, it's a beautiful
So special.
feeling to dress them.
Okay. And do you have any particular favorites that you have dressed or designed for? Because you said you start from scratch.
Yeah. So there are these two brides that I'm dressing right now who are getting married, Parina and Sanjana.
Okay.
I've seen them growing up,
Okay.
So it's very special for me to design for them.
And And when you say design from them, you make it from scratch, or you suggest to them that this, from what we have, this is what would be best for you?
No, we make it from scratch. Like for Sanjana, we are specially weaving a real zari lehenga
wow.
in Banaras, where we started from her ideas, penning it down with my ideas. Like for Parina, she wanted a red on red lehenga.
Okay.
So it all started with their ideas and, you know, how I can incorporate my sensibility and make it for their big, beautiful day.
Oh, how nice. That would be so special, right?
Yes,
to
it
see
is.
then once it's
Yeah.
like come to life.
It is.
How nice.
Yeah.
What would you have to say to somebody who aspires to be a jade bride?
Then wear it.
Is there something specific that they should like look for and like go for from all the outfits that you have?
You know, it's so personal, your special day, that I think they need to understand whether they want to wear something traditional, something that's a bit modern touch to it. Also, the space or not space, the place where you're getting married plays a huge role besides
so
your
many
passion.
people don't know that.
Yeah, because if you're getting married, say in Rajasthan, which is such a royal background, you know, the space lends to your wedding, right? Then if you wear a really modern piece for the wedding in a Rajasthan setting, I think it doesn't place well. It's like wearing a traditional heavy lehenga on the beach of Goa, where your wedding is.
So your
Right?
outfit have to decide
Yes.
according to whether
the place and your personal style plays a huge role in deciding your outfit. Then it shouldn't be a cookie cutter, you know, thought process.
yeah, that this is only what I
Yeah.
want to do. You have to maneuver around even the time of the year, probably.
Yeah, very much. Like you can't wear a velvet in a summer wedding. So then it has to be fluid, it has to be chiffon, it has to be
Yeah.
soft.
Yeah.
The colors have to be soft.
Can I ask you, how much do copies of your designs, because we know that they are sold, how much does that hurt the brand?
I think that exists and it doesn't bother me.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't bother me at all.
I would feel
I
very
think
bad.
I'm very flattered actually.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I would feel very bad if I created a piece with so much love and so much time and I see it replicated in other stores and people wearing it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you would be like, just wear the original, otherwise wear something else.
Yeah, I think really, but that's for the audience to decide because it's not right, first of all.
Yeah.
Yeah, secondly, but if they choose to buy a cheap copy which doesn't have the same craftsmanship, it is their loss.
There. So you don't take it upon yourself.
No,
Like, it's
it
not
doesn't bother me at
it's
all.
not hurting the brand.
No, and also it's very difficult to copy jade.
I've noticed that some
Yes.
brands and some collections and some clothes are so difficult that you can just tell.
They can't afford it.
Yeah, because it'll take so
Yeah,
much to
the
be
amount
able
of
to make
layering
it.
that we do and the quality of product that we have is very difficult.
Very difficult to replicate.
Yeah.
Then that saves you a lot then
Yes.
all the trouble. I think to end this conversation, what I want to ask is that how do you see jade evolving in the near future, and what do you want it to be? Like, where do you want it to be in the future?
I think I have many dreams for jade.
Okay.
We are just starting a new store in Delhi. We used to be in Mehroli, and now we are starting a store which can house more of our collection actually.
Okay.
We're going to have bridal, we are going to have the jade breath line, we're going to have the diffusion line, we have the menswear line. So it's a much larger space that we're doing. And yes, that's the dream. We have stores in Hyderabad, Ahmedabad, Bombay and Delhi for now. Yes, I do want to expand. It's already pan-India, maybe sometime in the future, you know, international. Yes,
That would be
yes,
great.
Yes, and having larger stores within India, more stores within India too.
Okay, so it reaches to more people.
Yeah.
Okay. But thank you so much, Monica. I had a great time. Thank you for being open to answering all of my questions.
Thank you. I had such a good time.
Thank you so much
Thank
for coming.
you.
Thank you guys so much for watching another episode of Alina Dissects. If you enjoyed it, please tell me in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.